For me, DragonHeart was not even an option. It was an obligation and then became an obsession. There are stories that reach you in the heart deeply. And this is a story about a heart that's shared, and about a man who finds his own heart and codes of honor, codes of behavior. I first read DragonHeart in the early 90s, but it was not given to me to direct. It was given to me by Rafaela de Laurentiis, the producer who had developed it, to give to my then partner, John Badham. We had a production company in which I was directing television pilots and Miami Vice and 30-something, and he was the feature director and I was the featured producer. And so she gave it to me. We were working on another project for me to direct, and she said, would you give this to your partner? Badham didn't respond to the material, but I thought it was fantastic, a great story. Had no idea how it could be done technically.
Sorry, Cohen. I hope you like it well done.
At that point, Patrick Reed Johnson, who had created the story, was set as the director.
He came to talk to me one day about this idea he had about this story about this last dragon and the last dragon slayer teaming up and conquering evil.
It was essentially, the skin game with a dragon in it. The idea of, or sort of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Dragon, I wanted the idea of a dragon and a knight conning villages for money just seemed really kind of, not only funny, but kind of sweet, Come
on, dragon.
Yes!
And then we met Chuck Pogue, who wrote the screenplay.
And I pitched him the idea for DragonHeart, and he listened patiently, and I thought, well, at the end, he's going to basically say, thanks, kid, see ya. Instead, he just looked at me and goes, I'm in.
He told me what he had of this story, which was the beginning and the end, and the device of the heart and all that, and I was just intrigued, and it's one of those things where I went home and ideas just started bristling out of me, and I could not sleep because it was just all coming in a big rush.
Universal said they would be willing to make the movie with Patrick directing, but only if I could bring the budget in at a certain number. And the only way we had to find out if that was possible was to, go by more traditional means of creating this dragon, which was sort of like doing it like they did it in the old days, Godzilla and King Kong, more modern techniques, but still the same idea. And of course, the best people to do that in the world are the Hensons.
Henson Creature Shop started building this dragon. 8 weeks later, they delivered it on time and looking pretty good. And we went over to England to Shepperton Studios and set up a pretty impressive set, which we probably shouldn't have spent as much time on as we did. I mean, we decided to shoot the campfire sequence, and we decided to shoot it outdoors at night, but we couldn't really shoot outdoors at night, so we had to literally build this big, forest clearing on stage and fill it in with a hanging foreground miniature of boulders and trees in the foreground and really extend it and make it look. And we had fireflies, and we had, it was really quite a production.
The problem was, though, that I could never get the budget down to where Universal would be willing to make it with Patrick directing.
It was very, very difficult for me because it was a dream project. It was something that it had inhabited my soul for a number of years, and I gave it everything I had.
And in 1992, I went off to Hong Kong to make the Bruce Lee story with Rob. And we had a fantastic working relationship. And when we came back and the movie opened in '93, what that movie had was something that I really needed for DragonHeart. That movie had great action, but a lot of heart. And it's very hard to find a director that can give you both.
It was during that time that a very significant event occurred in the development of DragonHeart, and it was called Jurassic Park. Raffi and I were at an early screening of Jurassic Park, and I turned to her and I said, there's your DragonHeart. That's the way to do DragonHeart, right there. So she went and got the studio to open their minds to this possibility that the team of she and I, which had been successful on Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, would go to DragonHeart. And finally Universal said, okay, let's hear your ideas. I told them my ideas. We made the deal, the agreement to go forward, and my first trip was to ILM to see if the technology of Jurassic Park could now be pushed to the next step, which was full-born character animation, that Draco would be alive.
Hello.
When I went to ILM, my next stop was to go across the bay to the garage, sloppy, crazy, creative and wonderful shop of Phil Tippett.
Our initial involvement in Jurassic Park, was from the point of view of overall direction and choreography and developing of the sequences. Our primary responsibility on DragonHeart was more to design, come up with the look of the dragon itself, and then begin to, in the context of the character design, block out some of the initial sequences using animatics, in which we create very rough moving storyboards that further delineate the action that is indicated in the storyboards, but really create the blocking and the timing of the sequence.
We went into a whole long series of things, and Phil said, the place we should start is with the Fu dog, with the temple guardian dog of Buddhist shrines, which is a lion mane. It's half lion, half dog. And the Fu dog, the beautiful thing about it is it has a certain lion-like elegance, a fierceness, but it's ultimately an incredibly proud and visually powerful creature.
But then we went back and forth on the aspects of it, the heavy chest and the head that wasn't on a long neck. We compressed the neck and I was thinking also a great deal about the release format of the film, what the rectangular frame was going to be, and so a great deal of the dragon design was taking that into account as well, how he would be framed on shot-to-shot basis, working in conjunction with if it's a buddy picture and one of the buddies is this big and the other buddy is that big, then you're going to have problems in framing the shot. So what kinds of things can the dragon do really became an issue. So it's not just, you can't just do a drawing or a sculpture. And I worked very closely with our sculptor at my studio, Pete Koning, who came up with the actual sculptures and did a great deal of the design work himself in determining what the various aspects of the dragon could be if it was in a lying pose, or if it was in a angry pose, or and from this we would begin to create a number of very small clay sketches or maquettes that we would take to Rob, and there would be maybe 20 or 30 of these things, and from those Rob would choose one of Pete's sculptures and say, this kind of sort of feels right, and we'd take that and then go back and hone it and develop it more into what ultimately became this final design maquette of the Draco character.
We went through a series of thousands and thousands of design issues: the wing, the shape of the wing, his color, what shape should his pupils be, how big should the eyes be, his teeth, how old is he, should he have cracked teeth, worn teeth, did he get in fights, does he have scars, all these things that I wanted to do. And to solve problems like how big he should be, it was a question of, we had a scene where Bowen and he have an epic battle, and he winds up in the mouth of the dragon.
If your feet come down, my sword goes up right into your brain.
And I kept drawing from nature, from boa constrictors, and I watched how they removed the pins from their jaws to open their jaws wide to swallow a creature 2 or 3 times the size of its head. And I said, well, why can't dragons have detachable jaws? So in the scene where he swallows Bowen, before he goes to swallow him, you see the pins push out and the jaw distends, so you could justify having a smaller head. And Phil and I finally set Draco at 18 feet high and 43 feet long with a 72.3 foot long wingspan.
Rob wanted two huge fangs for some of the scenes, particularly the scene where they have their standoff. So the retractable teeth were not so much a problem. More a problem for us were these other, interlocking teeth. How you make something with these big, chompers.
Things kept falling in, working, and looking at the consequences of any given physical decision. I wanted him to be like a Swiss Army knife. I wanted him to have a resting tail and a fighting tail. I felt Draco needed to use his hands, so he had to have feet and hands, not just have his wings and feet. So Nature is a master designer. With the help of Phil Tippett and Stephen Price, our first visual effects supervisor, I was able to get my dragon put together in a way that I thought was very successful, unique, and ultimately functioned well to be the first computer graphic actor.
Rob had requested a posable maquette. So in addition to the 5-foot model that we sent along for a lighting reference, there was another, like a stop motion model. It had an articulate skeleton in it that you could bend, and it was taken from the design maquette and cast up in a rubber material that would allow him to pose it, so he could imagine the model, with its tail curled around, or its wings unfolded, or its head looking back the other direction. That would help explain, to the crew what he was looking for.
It's one thing to design a dragon. It's another thing to give it a personality. To give it a personality, I felt it was very important that the personality be derived from the actor that was going to play the voice.
Haven't you noticed the pickings are rather slim these days?
I got me one just the other day.
So it was you who killed the scarred one?
For me, there were two choices for the voice, Sean Connery and Sean Connery. And it never entered my mind that it could be anyone else but Sean. He seemed to me to have not only a unique voice, instantly recognizable, but it's what he stood for in life as an actor and as a man that most related to what I had hoped for Draco.
Yes, I have heart that cost me all of my soul. Even then, I knew his bloodthirsty nature, but I thought my heart could change him. My God, I was so naive.
No more than I. All my life I've dreamed of serving noble kings, noble ideals.
I was so impressed when I met Dennis. When we left the room, I turned to Rafaela De Laurentiis, the producer, and I said, he is a knight of the old code.
I am a knight of the old code. My word is my bond.
And I said, he's handsome, he's obviously intelligent and fun to work with. I really think he's Bowen.
Yeah, I did a lot of training on this movie. I had to do a lot of sword fighting. So I worked with a Japanese sword master. His name was Kiyoshi Yamasaki. And because I wanted him to have an Eastern flavor, and Rob did too. And so they've learned a lot about samurai swords, and the armor that I'm wearing in this film is very Eastern. There's a touch of it there.
Like a pudding.
Dina Meyer was a second person we interviewed of 200 young women to play Kara. Kara is a difficult role in the sense that not only is she the moral conscience of the picture, she's supposed to be a peasant. Now, a lot of women today are very beautiful, but they are very thin, fragile. They wouldn't have made it past 1 year old in the dark ages. And I needed somebody who was strong, and I needed somebody who could, in the end, handle herself with these double Viking axes and look believable.
I think he brought out a really a much richer performance out of my character, because he knew what was going on in every scene so well. You know, he knew exactly what the dragon was thinking, what Bowen would be thinking, the weather, every little nuance he knew, and I think it was really helpful to me as an actor. It's always good to work with a director that knows what they're doing.
Pete Postlethwaite I'd seen in Name of the Father. He had received an Academy Award nomination. No one knew if he could do comedy, but I felt that anybody who was that assured in a dramatic role could take Brother Gilbert and make it real, make it charmingly funny, if not. I didn't want a buffoon, I didn't want a goofball. I wanted, you know, but I wanted an energetic and very strong presence.
Turn the other cheek, brother.
David Thewlis I'd seen in the film Naked, the Mike Leigh picture, which was so absolutely unabashedly, brutally strong and honest. He played an evil and amoral character with such aplomb and such abandon that it took my breath away. He won Best Actor at Cannes for that film, so he was my idea for Einan, because I thought what makes a villain scary is the brain, not the brawn.
I'm playing a symbol, I'm playing a representative metaphor of a character. And so really it's trying to find where to pitch the performance, because you're playing against an 80-foot dragon with the voice of Sean Connery, and and everything's just bigger, so your performance is bigger, but that's exactly what makes it fun.
And because of him, we got Julie Christie. They share the same agent, David Thewlis and Julie Christie, and so when the agent said to her, here's a script, you would play David Thewlis's mother, Julie, who's not worked in an American picture, I think, in 15 years, got interested.
Forgive me.
I know why you brought me the Dragon Slayers. You wanted them to kill him because you wanted me dead.
I wanted to correct a mistake made years ago when I saved a creature not worth saving.
I needed a voice for the presence of King Arthur, and you look at the world of great voices, and you have to list on any list, whether it's 2 voices or 3 voices, one of them has to be Sir John Gielgud.
A knight is sworn to valor.
A knight is sworn to valor.
His heart knows only virtue.
His heart knows only virtue.
His blade defends the helpless.
His blade defends the helpless.
His might upholds the weak.
His might upholds the weak.
His word speaks only truth.
His word speaks only truth.
His wrath undoes the wicked.
His wrath undoes the wicked.
So once we found the locations, which we did in Slovakia, former Czechoslovakia, we came back and we started rewriting, working on the script to make it match where we were really going to do the film and all that. And, the process of rewrite was sort of like on every movie. You just keep rewriting until, a few days before you start shooting. And basically then we started production in July of '94.
Well, what can we say? We're hot. A hot movie. There are some collaborators that you find when you make a movie that you say, these are my collaborators. This is a team. We are going to be a movie-making machine. And I have been very blessed by the contributing talents of many men and women that have worked on Dragon. The Bruce Lee story then came into DragonHeart, and now are moved on with me to Daylight. David Egby is an Australian cinematographer. He did the first Mad Max. He's done Dragon and Dragonheart and Daylight with me. I love his eye. I love the way he works, the speed at which he works, the chances he's willing to take, and his flexibility. Benjamin Fernandez, the production designer, can build anything, anywhere, with more skill, more enthusiasm, more detail, more brilliance than any production designer I've ever worked with, or even known.
This will bring you out well below the castle walls.
I met the costume designer Schindler's List, Anna Shepard, who is part Polish and part English, and I was very, very moved by her take on Dragonheart. She began to design the clothes for Bowen and Einan and Gilbert. Unfortunately, she got extremely ill in the middle of pre-production, and we were very fortunate to bring in Thomas Casterline, who understood a tremendous amount about the mass scenes, the bulk of armor and the other costuming in the picture, and Julie Christie's costumes, and just was able to pick up where Anna left off. Now, I had storyboarded the entire movie, and I knew exactly what Draco would be doing in which scenes, which way, and I knew that we had boiled that down to 182 Draco shots that were going to cost $22 million, so we couldn't afford more Draco shots. But the question came, how to start creating the character.
Jurassic Park was about 6.5 minutes of screen time with the computer graphics dinosaurs. And Dragonheart was 23 minutes of screen time with the dragon.
Sink! Sink! I can't. It doesn't get any deeper.
We did a test early on. Gosh, we probably did a test 6 or 8 months before we actually went to start doing the storyboarding. And what we did was we took the T-Rex from Jurassic Park and kind of stretched him out and stretched his mouth out a little bit and changed some things on him and made him look less like a dinosaur and more like a dragon.
Well, as the visual effects supervisor, my role in this movie was to create the visual effects, oversee the entire production of the visual effects. Basically, you know, the director and working with the director in terms of bringing Draco to life on the big screen.
As the heart binds Einan to me in life, it binds us in death. You've seen that it is. Through the heart we share each other's pains and power. But in my heart beats the life source. For Einan to die, I must die.
Well, to give Dennis Quaid and the other actors references on the location, once we determined, you know, exactly where Draco would go, we would typically set up a monster stick, and that's basically a pole, and then we had a bar across that with 2 circles representing Draco's eyes. So we'd set that up and say, okay, there's Draco where his eyes will be, and Dennis could cue off of that.
Don't you hear it? Our rebels have stormed the castle, alive or dead. Einan is beaten. We've won.
But I was working to tennis balls on sticks in this movie, and had a speaker set up in front of that. And Rob Cohen would play the dragon for me. He played Draco, and he was a great Draco. He had such a passion for it that it really helped me out a lot.
We also had large size plywood cutouts of a profile and flat-on version of Draco's face so that they could get a good example of his scale next to them.
On top of all of the technical things that you have to think about when you're filming a movie, in general, you also have to add what the dragon is going to be doing without him actually doing it. You have to commit it to memory. And then, you know, think about your acting and your accent and the camera and you know, just, it's a lot to think about.
It's a lot easier to make a special effects film now than it used to be 5 years ago because of the computer generation that they can do. 5 years ago, I would have been on a sound stage in front of a blue screen, which is, for an actor, it's hell to work with because you have no point of reference.
Have you been watching over me all night?
I've been thinking.
Yes? About what?
Many things. Mostly about what to call you. I think I found you a name.
You say that as though you reached up and plucked it from the sky.
I did. Up there. Do you see that group of stars?
I know those stars very well.
Do you see the shape that they make?
Mm-hmm. The dragon.
Yes. They call it Draco. It means dragon in the scholar speech.
So instead of calling me dragon in your tongue, you'll call me dragon in some other tongue.
You're right. It's silly.
No. No, I would be honored to be named after those stars. I truly would. Thank you, Bowen. Draco. Draco.
One of the things that we utilize for both references and for filming is the microlight, which is basically an ultralight type of aircraft. And then once we filmed that, we put Draco over the top of that and removed any traces of the aircraft. So Draco's totally CG except for a few bits and pieces within the film. One of those is the claw when it has Dennis pinned down onto the ground, and that's a full-size set piece that we had on location. And that works pretty well because it's dark and it's not moving. You know, his hand's supposed to be fixed. And then when Dennis is inside Draco's mouth, for that we built a large-scale jaw rig for that. And it basically incorporated both the teeth and the moving tongue, which was all puppeted on location. So around that, once Dennis was placed in that, we filmed it and you could see all the rigging around it. And then in computer graphics later, we put Draco's head over the top of that. For the one scene where he puts the blanket over that, basically that's somebody else placing a blanket over a fiberglass section that was made of Draco with some steam coming up.
Oh dear. Thank you. It's personal.
What was it?
An old complaint that acts up now and again.
In a number of the sequences where he really interacts with his environment, we work closely with Kit West and his practical effects team. For the waterfall where Draco flies through the waterfall, they rigged up multiple air mortars and basically filled them with salt. And then on cue, they would go ahead and release that, and that would burst the water out as if Draco's coming through. We did a number of sequences where Draco falls into the lake. We had 3 55-gallon drums welded together, dropped from a height by a helicopter. And so for those splashes, that worked well.
The process of making DragonHeart ran for 2.5 years, and after I shot the film and cut the film, normally a director goes through a finishing process of sound effects and music and looping and so on, and you dub it and it's released to the public. In this film, however, I had another 13 months of work after finishing the cut of the film, and I really hadn't been searching out another film, but I've been reading some things, and a film found me, and it was called Daylight. I talked to my friend Sylvester Stallone, and I asked him to read it. He loved it, and the movie came together. We decided to shoot it in Rome for lots of complicated reasons, and I realized that I was going to be separated from ILM for a long time, and we decided to set up a satellite hookup from my office at Cinecittà to ILM in Marin County, California. So on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights after shooting all day in the tunnel with Sly, I would go to my office with David Henry, my major domo, and Astrid Gattuso, my assistant, and we would start the broadcast from Rome to San Francisco, essentially. And there would be all the animators, I could see them, and there would be the shots. What we really want is maximum empathy as he makes the decision to tell the entire tale. And the look to them is not so much a look of a guy pulled out of a mood, but a guy who's staying inside the valor, virtue, truth, ah yes, truth. And I would give them direction of where to go with the shot and how to change it and what I thought the acting needed at that moment, and to try to each week, each day, each session, lift each moment up to my hope. This involved kind of becoming Draco myself physically. His hand is truly tucked into an instructional fist, shall we say. It's not a fist to fight with, but it's not a finger point, but the fist is tucked in. I'm doing it on the tape. Sean did a beautiful reading, but there he was with his glasses and at a podium. He didn't flap his wings, and he didn't roar, and he didn't try to make dragon gestures. That all had to be invented.
Did you get my note about the hand gesture? Yeah, what exactly do you want with that hand gesture?
Because all we got was like an open palm, it said open palm gesture or something like this.
After examining it a number of times, I found that the flick off the chin was distracting, and it wasn't a Connery kind of gesture. I felt it was important that each of the 80 animators and technical directors from ILM understand how an actor works, and more especially how this actor, Sean Connery, works. So I was troubled about how to do that, and I finally hit on this idea that turned out to be the right idea. I took every film he ever made, from Darby O'Gill and the Little People through Just Cause, which was the Spectrum at that point, and I cut out every close-up. I hired an editor just to do this, an assistant editor, to go through every Laserdisc and video and take every single close-up of Sean Connery out of every one of those 40 years of films. And I would sit there and I would go, anger, sarcasm, smarmy sexuality, vulnerability, pedagogical, eyebrow movement. Whatever came to my mind, I would give these close-ups emotional value. And we built up categories, and that would then be made into tape. So when an animator would have a scene where Draco says, "I am the last one," right? That's rage. So go to the rage tape.
I am the last one.
I wanted Draco to relate to everybody, from a 6-year-old who only knew him as a talking dragon to a 60-year-old who's known every film or most of the films that Sean has been part of all these years. There's a little Connery nod. He doesn't need to be looking up because he did up on Wisest of Our Race. So he's like, he looks over. Long ago, when man was young and
the dragon already old, the wisest of our race took pity on man.
I felt it was part of my job to make Draco act. Destroy it. And then the arm, what happens is with the arm, when you do that, it kind of goes beyond its stopping point and then kind of comes back a little bit, if you know what I mean. It's like a destroy it, and it kind of comes back, because you can't just stop your arm dead. Once you make a strong motion, it kind of vibrates to a stop. If you stop it, but your fingers and your hand kind of still bounce a little bit. So, took a great gift and destroyed it.
A spoiled, ungrateful child was given a great gift and destroyed it.
The recording of the voice was done in 3 sessions. One before the film was shot in the Bahamas at Compass Point Studio. The second one was done in Rome at International Recording Studios after the film was shot, but before the animation was done. And the third one was a smaller session done in Rome after all 182 Draco shots were finished.
Then he betrayed you, just as he betrayed the dragon whose heart he broke.
That's a lie, dragon.
Stop calling me dragon!
I have horses and I ride, and I bought a book on horse anatomy, and I was paging through the book and had beautiful drawings of horse musculature and anatomy. And I began to look, and I thought, well, how does a horse run? What goes on when a horse moves that makes it look so powerful and so beautiful? maybe there's a key in here somehow to what would make a dragon look good to fly. You can't go to many dragon anatomy books in the library. So I began to realize how the horse musculature was all attached and how muscle groups worked. And the contraction and expansion of these muscle groups created different body flows and bunches and, of musculature that gave it this power and rhythm. So I called up the guys and I said, look, I'm going to make a tape because I think I've got it figured out. If his act of flying involved the abdominals, the pectorals, and the lats, so that when he flew, he crunched, so that when he's flying, he's making it strong, right? So when he flies, the body is in motion. The idea of making Draco physical was something that obsessed me night and day, and it came about through experiments relating to nature, relating to oneself, and relating to Sean, and ultimately he walked with power, the power and grace of a lion, and he flew with tremendous joy, but incredible physical exertion. And the 4 ILM department heads and myself worked on a daily, if not hourly basis for 13 months to bring Draco to life, 1 frame at a time.
Well, how many dragons do you know?
In my opinion, you're only the author of the film if you're the writer, director, producer, editor, cameraman, composer, actor. Maybe then you're the auteur. Other than that, you're the chairman of a committee of collaborators who are your entire hopes for success or failure rides on the strength of that committee.
Wait! Better right in. Still dead.
Randy Edelman is a composer of enormous talents. Like John Williams, he is both classically trained, has an incredible ear for melody, understands how music and images work together, and is not always in pursuit of the new hip synthesizer effect, is much more thinking about how can I help either reinforce this story point, make a counterpoint music to this, or bring a large emotional dimension to this film.
We work very closely together. And Rob, it's interesting because he has different expectations as to what he wants the music, how the score functions in his movies, and they're a bit higher in that Rob will say, for instance, that he wants music to be tense, and that's a good direction when you're looking at a scene, but heroic, or poignant and muscular. So it makes it much more difficult for me, but in the end, more interesting. And more interesting is always the way to go. And he knows what he wants, and he knows when he hears something how to communicate with me if it's not exactly what he wants, or I'm on a different track, or I'm going in a certain direction, what it is about what he's listened to without looking at the musical paper and be able to say, this G flat should be a B natural, what he wants. And that's very helpful in the pressurized kind of film world where you only have sometimes, a few weeks to do something that is a great deal of work. So, we've learned to trust each other, and we have, I think, a good kind of mutual respect.
Peter Amundsen, my editor, a film's rhythm is its heartbeat. How a film is cut is probably more important than any single aspect to whether the audience enjoys it or not, and how well it plays. If a film is not properly paced, it will die. If a film is too quickly paced, it will have no emotional content. If an actor's performance is great, but it's in snippets and different takes, and those takes are not strung together artfully, the actor will look less good than he really is. All of this rests in the collaboration between the director and the editor. Rafaela de Laurentiis is a true producer. She is a producer by birth, she's a producer by genetics, by heritage, and she's a producer in her own right. She is a very powerful woman with a great vision, great taste, and she and I have grown together through these 3 pictures we have done together, DragonHeart being the second of the 3, Daylight being the up-and-coming film. And lest anyone say to you, oh, isn't the producer the guy who brings the money? That's like saying the husband in a marriage is the guy who brings the money. A producer is a 50% partner to the director in the result of the picture on every level, creative, financial, logistical. Without Rafi, there would be no DragonHeart, and probably without Rafi, I would not be sitting here on a signature collection Laserdisc.
So I'm very, very happy with this movie. I mean, it was worth 8 years of struggle. I'm really happy with it. I mean, it turned out being everything I hoped for and more.
There are very few times in Hollywood where you can make a commercial movie, and I'm proud to say that DragonHeart is an extremely profitable film, but where you can make a commercial movie that has anything to say to anyone other than a thrill ride, let alone to have a lot of emotion, and also have things about codes and ethical choices, morals, and to couch it all in the new world of special effects, and to be a pioneer in this new frontier of special effects work, and to work with the most talented special effects people, ILM, in the world. It was a gift. And those 2.5 years of my life, I am quite certain will be among the most cherished and vivid because of this experience. And I hope the audience relates to it that way.
And in the days following Draco's sacrifice, Bowen and Kara led the people in a time of justice and brotherhood. As I remember it now, those were golden years, warmed by an unworldly light. And when things became the most difficult, Draco's star shone more brightly for all of us who knew where to look.